The Center for Housing Solutions and Community Initiatives is hosting its 13th annual Hudson Valley Housing Forum November 16th through the 20th. The Housing Forum gathers leaders and professionals, virtually this year, from across the state to discuss trends and housing policy that impacts the Hudson Valley region. This year's forum, titled Housing Matters, Shelter from the Storm, includes dynamic national and regional leaders as keynote speakers and panelists for each day of the week-long event. On Monday, November 16th, Chasing the American Dream of Home Ownership. The morning session focuses on home ownership challenges in this complex and volatile market. Karen Hoskins, National Director for Home Ownership with NeighborWorks America, starts off the day as the morning keynote. Monday evening, the Center for Housing Solutions is honored to host Diane Yentel, CEO and President of the National Low-Income Housing Coalition, to discuss housing and homeownership from a national perspective. On Tuesday, November 17th, Multifamily Development and Market Dynamics. On Tuesday, the program explores market dynamics, finance, property management and design, and the impact of the moratorium on evictions. Join Ruth Ann Wisniewskis, Commissioner, New York State Division of Housing and Community Renewal, followed by a panel discussion with perspectives from developers, municipal leaders, property managers, and lenders. On Wednesday, November 18th, Gentrification with Balanced Development. Investment and the revitalization of our urban centers without displacement has been a long-standing challenge in the Hudson Valley. While many view these improvements as an important evolution, others are finding themselves left behind and wondering how they fit into changing communities and afford to remain. The region is facing the challenges with balancing demographic shifts, growth, and residents' needs. Ed Poteet, president of Carthage Advisors, adjunct professor at Columbia University and author, will kick off the day's events as keynote speaker. On Thursday, November 19th, the Real Estate Market Rollercoaster. On Thursday, Mike Kinsella, executive director at Up With Growth, delivers the keynote about the real estate market from a national perspective. Next, join Hudson Valley real estate leaders for a real estate market update discussing demand, supply, value, and lending in the residential real estate market. On Friday, November 20th, Race, Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion in Community Development and Housing. Friday's program opens with a keynote address by Dr. Don Trahan Jr. Each day, the Solutions Lounge will happen directly after each panel session. The panelists, moderator, and keynote will be available for a facilitated conversation about the challenges presented to answer the question, so, what are we going to do about it? Tickets are now available at patternforprogress.org/housing-forum. We look forward to seeing you there.
Welcome to this year's annual Housing Forum, Housing Matters, Shelter from the Storm. My name is Joe Czajka, and I'm the Senior Vice President with Pattern and the Executive Director for the Center for Housing Solutions and Community Initiatives. As many of you know, Pattern for Progress has had a focus on housing for well over a decade. In fact, housing was so critical to the organization, we created the Center for Housing Solutions in 2012 to ensure we keep housing on the front burner. For well over a decade, Pattern has been holding an annual housing forum. The forum is designated and designed to provide information, statistics, and demographics, along with the best practices for tackling the challenges in housing. Typically, this presentation and our entire forum would be in person at a conference space venue. This housing forum is obviously being conducted in a virtual space on the Zoom platform. With all of the benefits of meeting in the virtual world, you can sleep a little longer. No drive, no traffic, no parking issues, no lines, and you can make your own coffee and cereal, save lots of time. And probably the most important element of attending the forum in a virtual space, there are no worries about what to wear. In fact, some of you may be in sweats or pajamas. We have an incredible week ahead of us, and that is packed, absolutely packed, with amazing keynote speakers, experts in the field of housing, community development, real estate, lending, and organizational structures, and growth in terms of diversity, equity, and inclusion. As we approach Thanksgiving, we should all be extremely thankful. I am hopeful all of you are safe, healthy, and happy. I'm thankful for many things, including your support of Pattern and for attending this forum. With that said, I want to thank our investors in the Center for Housing, which include NeighborWorks America, Howard Hanna Rand Realty, the Carney Group, Hudson River Housing, RUPCO, the Community Preservation Corporation, TD Bank, and Baxter Development. I also want to thank our sponsors of the event, Ulster Savings Bank, Montefiore St. Luke's Cornwall Hospital, Hudson Valley Federal Credit Union, AKRF, and Marshall and Sterling. Although we miss seeing everyone in person, this is where we are. So let's make the best of it. And now let's get on. I'd like to take a few minutes to set the stage for the week by providing current conditions and overarching themes of housing and community development and the economy. Today, we're facing incredible devastation in terms of our health, housing, education, employment, and the economy. We're also an extremely polarized nation during a time when we should be working hand in hand. The impact of COVID-19 touches every aspect of our lives. We are now quickly approaching an unbelievable figure of 250,000 deaths due to COVID. Clearly, this has impacted all of our lives. Both renters and homeowners are struggling. There's a staggering number of looming evictions and future foreclosures. The economy has been slowly recovering. However, cases and hospitalizations have been increasing. Things are changing so rapidly during the pandemic, and the supply of real-time data, local data, is very limited. I will, however, provide you with some recent housing data and also speak in terms of qualitative data based on local and regional observations of the economy, the market, and social changes in the Hudson Valley. So here is what we know. Main streets and downtowns have been getting busier each day, but there is still a hesitation from consumers and for owners staffing their businesses. Our state just placed a 10 p.m. closing time, a curfew, if you will, on many establishments like bars, cafes, and even fitness centers. Home improvement centers have been busy as many folks are working on renovations and home projects. There's a noticeable increase in traffic on the roads and pedestrians on the sidewalks. The supply chain for consumer goods and food is still impacting what we see actually on the shelves. There's a lot of fear of getting sick. Some people do not want to leave their homes, and for many of us who are still employed, working from home is now commonplace. Schools have been an enormous challenge. There are many issues and barriers for teachers, students, and parents, with implications on the workforce and household budgets. The pandemic forced us into a new education model of long distance and remote learning. This proved very difficult for many families who do not have access to broadband, technology, or even a space to set aside in their home, albeit an apartment, a house. Kids and parents are sharing computers and electronic devices for school and for work, assuming the equipment and broadband is available. Broadband has become a major concern. The term essential worker has become well known. They're vital to our economy and certainly our health and well-being. Many people now have a full understanding and a clear understanding about the people we count on every day, our essential workers. With all that said, in terms of the economy, there continues to be a slow recovery. The economy has taken a heck of a punch, and as a result, local, county, and state budgets will be greatly impacted for a few years, unless, of course, there is federal aid to the states and then in turn to the local municipality. All levels of government have seen an increase in the cost of services and programs while revenues have plummeted. The state is facing an estimated budget gap of well over $50 billion. The immediate impact of the lost revenue, furloughs, elimination of vacant positions, services and program cuts, and probable layoffs. Long-term implications, lost revenues need to be made up. Many municipalities are using their reserves to balance their budgets. Some may need to borrow money, raise fees, sell land and buildings, and unfortunately, look at an increase in taxes, and may need to actually override the tax cap that has been instituted some 8 years ago. I'm asked a lot of questions about housing, economic development, the real estate market, and what will recovery actually look like. Well, there are two ways of looking at today's state of affairs, as a pessimist or as an optimist. While nobody has a crystal ball, let's keep a positive outlook on things, do the best we can, and move forward. After all, many of those in the audience are practitioners in housing and community development and economic development. Many people depend on the programs you operate and you administer. In terms of the Hudson Valley economy, our region, especially north of Westchester and Rockland County, it relies heavily on the tourism industry and related businesses in retail, in entertainment and accommodations, and in dining. While these sectors employ lots of people, at least they did for a while, now we're going through some very difficult times. The industry has not offered a living wage rate. Annual average wages in the tourism and hospitality sector range from $21,000 to about $30,000 a year and are often part-time with no benefits. Another large employment sector is in the warehouse and distribution industry. Wages are a little better than in the tourism sector, but they still are not what we call a living wage rate. Yes, there are exceptions, but overall, the workforce is struggling to survive in the Hudson Valley. A vast majority of the high-paying manufacturing jobs are no longer a mainstay in our economy. However, there are some encouraging signs this sector can grow again as businesses pivot and realign with the needs and demands of the economy. From the perspective of economic development, there have been some business relocations from New York City to the Hudson Valley, and many are bringing higher wage jobs in finance, in accounting, and high-tech positions. While this is occurring, keep in mind the traditional business model and office space demands have changed due to the remote work, and there has been a paradigm shift, but more on that a little bit later. Let's talk about the housing market. Before COVID-19, the real estate market in 2020 started out very strong. We were in a seller's market with very low interest rates. The SALT cap hurt a lot of homeowners as deductions were limited, but that eventually got priced into the market. The interest rate for a 30-year loan was about 3.5%, and the unemployment rate was hovering around 4%. The real estate industry and the market drastically changed over the last 8 months. The industry is shut down as it had to go virtual, essentially no in-person showings. Real estate closings took on a new look, e-signatures, e-docs, and drive-through closings actually under tents. Many sellers and buyers were nervous to have people in their homes, and getting repairs and improvements was yet another challenge. It was difficult to obtain local records as municipal offices were closed to the public. Unemployment skyrocketed and businesses, unfortunately, had to shut down. A nervous market at the beginning, nobody knew what to think or what to do. However, for those who were looking for a home and lucky enough to keep their jobs were still in the market. Demand was high with a very limited supply. People started to buy homes sight unseen. These were primarily people from New York City, as many people wanted to leave the high dense urban center and move to the suburbs. Banks are reporting a healthy stream of refis still today and are now seeing a healthy stream of new mortgage loan applications. Just when we thought interest rates couldn't go lower, They did. Today, we're seeing rates as low as 2.8%. Let's take a very quick look at the median sales data for the Hudson Valley. These figures represent year-over-year numbers for the third quarter of 2019 versus 2020. Clearly, you can see dramatic increases in the prices, with Westchester jumping year-over-year by 125,000 and Columbia by almost 100,000. Sullivan, Greene, and Columbia, some of our most rural counties, saw an increase by over 30%. Other data points to the number of homes for sale in the month's supply, essentially the inventory. Lots of red on the screen. There is a dramatic decline in the number of homes for sale, and subsequently, the month's supply also drops. This data all points to strengthening sellers' market. Sellers are seeing multiple offers, cash offers, and offers well above asking price. Low inventory, low interest rate, fear of dense urban environments, and remote work capabilities all continue to feed this real estate frenzy. There are some signs of a slowdown, but they may be regular seasonality of the industry. The concern, how long will it last? What are the implications to local buyers? And will this new housing bubble burst? Overall, still too early to talk long range, as the market is too much in a state of flux. Regardless of the trend, it has only been a few months. Winter is here, and typically the market slows. The fear of dense urban centers is still very real. Again, interest rates under 3%, historic lows. Here are some other contributing factors to think about in terms of the real estate market and how the Hudson Valley is changing. The millennials are now in their early to late 30s and don't want to live in an apartment anymore. Many got married, and some may want to start a family and buy a home. The issue is market supply and, of course, the down payment and closing costs. There has been a shift and dramatic increase in working remotely. How does this play into the formula? Well, the traditional 9-to-5 office model is gone, and working remote is commonplace for many professions. Some, but not all. The size of homes has drastically changed since 1950s. Homes were small in the 50s and 60s, maybe 1,200 to 1,400 square feet. Then the market went big, all the way to McMansions, 3,000 square feet or much more. The demand for large mansions declined due to costs, taxes, heating bills, cooling bills, and the fact that people are actually having less kids. So we started to go small again, all the way back to tiny homes, 300, 400, 500 square feet. Now we're looking at going big again, the need for additional space. Why? Well, we have remote work equals home offices. We have remote learning. That equals homeschooling. The fear of being in a crowd. Well, some are putting in home gyms and media rooms. What does this mean? Existing homes will need additions. Good for the construction industry, architects, and designers. Seasonal homes are being converted to year-round homes. Office parks are starting to empty, which allows for possible adaptive reuse into, I don't know, perhaps housing. Will towns now allow accessory dwelling units, otherwise known as ADUs? What are the implications for short-term rentals, as the density of hotels remains a fear for many travelers? Remote work is changing our lives. No commute or reduced number of days commuting. This will either increase work time or increase family and volunteer time. In terms of the rental housing market, the moratorium on evictions keeps getting extended, but at some point it will expire. While this provides immediate relief for renters, unfortunately, the rent will come due, along with all of the arrears. This has become an issue for both small and large landlords, and they may ultimately need to make some very difficult decisions. Property owners could very easily be looking at a 40% or even 50% loss of revenue. This puts them at serious risk of not paying their bills, mortgages, taxes, and insurance. Additionally, maintenance could suffer. The loss of rental income may ultimately lead to disinvestment and loss of property value. Owners of commercial properties have also had to carry the maintenance and operating expenses associated with their buildings. And just like the residential tenants, the rent will come due for the commercial tenants as well. There have been state and local programs to assist renters, but the programs are very difficult to administer. I want to quickly share some of the data on housing cost. Housing, as many of us know, is said to be affordable when you pay no more than 30% of your gross income towards rent or homeownership. Over 30%, you are considered cost burdened, and over 50%, you are severely cost burdened. Here are the numbers for the Hudson Valley in terms of renters and owners that are cost burdened and severely cost burdened. As you can see, there are over 160,000 renters and owners paying over 50% of their gross income for shelter. Let me repeat that. Over 160,000 households pay more than 50% of their income for shelter. Are we in a crisis? I think so. Another set of data to show the need for affordable housing is something called Out of Reach, an analysis conducted by the National Low-Income Housing Coalition every year. In fact, their CEO and president, Diane Yantel, will be joining us on Monday evening for a special keynote. This data set essentially shows the median renters' wage rates, the fair market rents, and the monthly gap in housing costs for renters. You see a lot of red on the screen. I've been an advocate for affordable housing for over 3 decades, and I completely understand there is an affordable housing crisis, and it has been magnified by the pandemic. I hope this data helps prove the point to many of the naysayers out there. Bottom line, no one really knows what will happen, and I offer these thoughts and this analysis, demographics, and some statistics to help frame and start a balanced conversation about housing as we continue to reopen the economy and look to recover. The road will be bumpy, but we are resilient. The key to normalizing the economy is to continue to get people safely back to work, kids back to school, and raising consumer and employee confidence levels. It is really important to be very cautious as we look to revitalize neighborhoods and invest in our communities while we mitigate displacement as homes and rental pricing rise. That concludes my opening remarks for this year's forum, Housing Matters, Shelter from the Storm. We have an amazing schedule of events with all-star lineups for each session. Remember, after each keynote and panel, we are facilitating a solutions lounge where you will have the opportunity to participate in creating a possible pathway forward. So sit back, relax, have your coffee, and enjoy the sessions. Thank you for attending.
All right.
Okie doke.